Hi everyone, and welcome to this of today's USN Travel Talk, where we are talking with partners around the world. And today we are going to move all the way over to Japan and talk to André with the lovely Swedish name of André Starell. So he's Swedish, but I know we got some Finnish people on board. So that means we're going to continue in English anyway, so people can understand what we are talking about. But welcome, André, today, and welcome to this travel talk.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and hopefully share some news and interesting things about Japan.
Yeah, and we know, of course, that the world is kind of gone on into lockdown 3. We feel like a little bit around the world. Myself, I'm sitting in Dubai, so we got some stricter measurements coming in here this week. So we got 3 meters in between tables in restaurants and 3 meters between machines in gyms, and they closed down for all live entertainment. And they're closing down for, minimizing also gatherings. So it's like going down to 10 people instead of 30, which we had, and only 4 around the table. I think it is also on that. So it's a few more measurements coming in place. So, but today we're going to talk about how Japan has been managing around, through the pandemic. You've been in Japan all the time, haven't you, André?
Yes, I've been here since the start of it all.
Mm. How long have you actually been in Japan?
I've been in Japan now for about 6.5 years in total.
Okay. So tell a little bit about your background, since you're Swedish. So you got a bit of a Scandinavian view on what's happening as well and what you see around you, and maybe can, compare a little bit of what's happening back home.
Yeah, absolutely. Stereotypically as a Swede, I've had most of my career at IKEA, actually. I spent about 10 years doing anything and everything that you can think of within an IKEA store, and moved to Japan. Felt that I wanted something new, a challenge, and ended up working at IKEA here in Japan as well. It took me about a year, and then I figured that it was time to sort of step out of my comfort zone. So I was lucky enough to find a job within travel. And I've been working in the travel industry for the last 4.5, 5 years.
Okay. And you always with DMCs all the time? Or
sorry?
Have you been with DMCs all the time? Is it DMC work you've been doing? Yeah. So you know very well around Japan. So, of course, then the past year has been, of course, a different challenge as well within the Japan, I think, because you had a hard lockdown when it started, the whole...
Well, there was never really a hard lockdown per se. There was initially a state of emergency declared, but because of Japanese law, it was fairly toothless. It limited when restaurants and bars could stay open, but everyone went along with the recommendations from the government. Our company, along with many others, we started working from home. People were careful when going outside, and keeping a social distance and all those kind of things. So after that state of emergency, the cases dropped down to less than 10 per day. And so the state of emergency ended, and everyone was fairly happy about that. Then life kept on as usual, and we saw a slight increase in cases again, of course, after that when people went out again. And in autumn, I guess, was the big next step in sort of our COVID life here in Japan, when they started a Go-To Travel campaign to help rural areas and the travel industry in general. So basically incentivized people to travel domestically when they couldn't travel internationally, which probably saved a lot of the suppliers within the travel industry, hotels and others. But that also meant that you had a lot of people, traveling and interacting with each other all across Japan. So this autumn and winter, the cases started increasing again. And now we're back to a state of emergency for Tokyo and the surrounding areas. And again, it's more of recommendations from the government. The only sort of tooth they have with the state of emergency is they're limiting that bars and restaurants and other venues need to be closed by 8 p.m.
Okay. So you're living a fairly kind of normal life in one way, but you know, if you want to go out and eat, you have to do that by 8 p.m. basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you wear mask or face mask all the time, of course, when you're going out.
Yeah, I mean, being Japan, it was people were accustomed to wearing masks even before this. So yeah, I mean, I would say 80 to 90% wear masks whenever they go outside. Social distancing, most stores and restaurants that you go to will check your temperature before you go inside. There's sanitizer basically everywhere you go. So in that sense, Japanese society has sort of taken the measures to heart.
Yeah, they just addressed it very easily in terms of that, probably. And of course, we're looking at the country. What are you saying? Like 120 millions? Is it?
Yeah.
So social distance is a different situation when we're talking to Sweden, which is your 10, 11 millions, or even Denmark, you go down to 5 millions. It's a different operation as well. All doing that.
Yeah, I mean, especially outside of Tokyo, you get to the countryside, it's probably, fine. But here in Tokyo, when you have 10, 12 million people all taking the subway during rush hour, it's difficult to social distance. So many companies, unfortunately, still have to or still have their employees coming to the office. But here at Destination Asia, as soon as the state of emergency was announced, we all moved to work from home. So for us, that hasn't been a problem.
So many companies still have people coming in for work.
Unfortunately, yes. Since it's up to each company to decide.
Okay. So there's nothing saying that you should work from home.
Again, recommendations from the government, but every company does what they feel is best for them. Okay.
So it seems like you're operating in the same way as we do in Scandinavia, because everything is recommendations in one way, but people always listen to recommendation and do what they do.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's quite a lot of similarities between the two. I think the difference might be that the Japanese sort of society in general, they were very comfortable with accepting social distancing and masks as part of a normal life anyway. So it wasn't a big change for people. But other than that, yeah, I mean, we listen to what the experts and the government say, and we listen to the recommendations. And I think now we're slowly starting to see a bit of a pushback.
Yeah.
Where people are asking the government to do more to support people and businesses. And
which I think mostly everywhere they're doing, because they think this is dragging out a little bit longer than many thought as well. And if you then go into that things, we talked about cases. How many cases are you looking at? And like we said, we have to be in, putting in place we're looking at a population of 120 million. So how many cases are you looking at every day now in Japan?
It's about 4,000 to 4,500 a day in total, and roughly half of those are in Tokyo. Okay.
And then the rest is spread out. In Tokyo, we're looking at a population of?
Well, 10 to 12 million if you take sort of the more central parts of Tokyo, and the further out you go, if you count all the suburbs and sort of neighboring residential areas, we're talking about 25, 30 million people.
Okay. So you're looking at relatively small numbers if you compare them to population, I would say, because we're looking at almost 2,000 on the 5 million or 6 million sometimes in Denmark. They're going down numbers as well in Scandinavia. This is similar. And of course, the big thing we're talking about is vaccines. So where we start rolling out a few vaccines in Scandinavia, even though there's a bit of a halt due to Pfizer's production line. How is it with the vaccines and the opinions around that in Japan?
I think what they've said now is that in March we'll start to see the first vaccine, and as many other places, there's steps in place who will get the vaccine first, and obviously, first responders, doctors, and nurses, and then elderly people and people that are especially vulnerable. So and then
so you're looking at rolling out.
Yeah.
So it's March basically. So you haven't started vaccination at all now? No. Do you know which vaccines are coming in place? Or is it any of Asian origins, or are they going on towards the European approvals?
Yeah, no, they're going for the European and American vaccines. I don't remember which is the one that's first in the pipeline, to be honest.
Oh, no. Okay, no, because we got 3 of them, like Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, which is up there. And here in Dubai, of course, we got the Sinopharm which is kind of the Chinese, but it's been tested here in the UAE as well. So they're rolling out this one full on here. So I think they've already gone through 3 million or something like that with the first doses. So they're very good. So I just had one question saying, Terje, you need to finish that sentence, because I see he asking, how is the general situation for the J? And I might don't know what the J is. So if Terje continue that sentence, I will be fine. But all in all, you're saying that Japan, I was just thinking for traveling, of course, that's the main thing as well. We'll talk about that. So Japanese, can they travel outside Japan at the moment?
Yes, they are. Well, they can, but obviously they're advised not to. Yeah. But it is possible for Japanese people to travel abroad to certain countries.
Yeah, and the measurements when they're coming back, do they have to have the negative test and the quarantine, or? Yeah. And can foreigners, of course, can't come in because the border is closed to foreigners.
Correct, and hopefully, what we've heard so far is that they're going to start a trial sometime in April. Okay. And open up to certain groups of travelers and certain countries, probably in the nearby region here in Asia, where they feel that they have the virus under control. And then from there, slowly start increasing the number of people that they let in, leading up to the Olympics. And then after the Olympics is when we think that the country will be more or less open for regular sort of tourism, FIT business.
Okay. And I also heard on the radio that they're looking at saying that for the Olympics, that all the contestants will have to be vaccinated before they're arriving as well. They're looking at a system where they can do that too as well, apparently. But we're going to talk about the Olympics when you're coming further on to that. Shall we just check on? We have a few slides, which is easy talking points, and people can ask questions. We can just jump into that straight away. Yep. Like I said, and everybody's been listening to us as well, and many of them come back regularly here. We know Destination Asia as DMC. And how many are you in the office, Andre? I know Kevin is on listening to us as well. But how many are you in the office?
Right now, we're down to about 20 to 25 people.
Yeah. And you spread on Tokyo and
Kyoto.
Okay, good. I think just to keep it on to our, we're trying to keep it on to 30 minutes here, and so people have time. We know that people have limited time as well in Scandinavia, where it's a lot of furloughs or part-time workers. So it's going to be a short kind of intro, but I'll leave this one up to you to get a little bit on the update on I know because you have to limit where you can go, of course, because of the situation as well.
Yeah, well, so what I was going to introduce is a little bit about our thoughts on product development, and this isn't a plan that was put in place because of Corona, but it fits very well with what we expect from travel, once the virus is under control, and that is to focus on outdoor activities, visits to local communities, and cultural experiences across Japan. And if you look at the map on the slide, there's 3 areas highlighted in red, and those are the 3 prefectures that we have worked to produce some new products this year. Shizuoka, close to Tokyo and Mount Fuji. And then we have Shimane along the coast, and then Oita, which is down on the southern island.
Can I just ask you, for those ones who maybe is not that familiar on Japan, how far is Shizuoka? Is that how you spell it?
Shizuoka, yeah, I will go into that in a minute. But,
okay.
But basically, it's about an hour from Tokyo by the bullet train called the Shinkansen.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're going into that, so these are the 3 areas you're focusing, because also with the outdoor and more COVID kind of friendly activities.
Yeah. And I mean, in general, I think for the Scandinavian market, outdoor activities and seeing nature is one thing that attracts a lot of people. Getting to know the local culture in places that you visit as well. And seeing more than just the big cities.
Yep. I just had one question now. The rest of the question came. It says, how is the general situation for the Japanese tourism industry? Like I said, in other countries, like for example Thailand, which is very depending on tourism, there is a lot of operators closed and down and lost jobs. How is that situation? It says, when I presume the situation is better in Japan, as they maybe are less or depend less on the foreign tourism. Do you know how? Is there any kind of general on that you can say?
Well, we have seen a few of our competitors that have been forced to close down. Others have adapted and focused more on the inbound tourism. So there has been a bit of a shift for some in terms of trying to find business inside of Japan until things get better. But we do have seen some casualties in terms of our competitors being able to or having to close down, and also some of our local partners that we've had arrangements with before they've had to close down as well. So I think we've been spared in a sense, but there are still casualties from this in Japan as well.
Which is exactly so. It is everywhere, but maybe less than many of the other Asian countries, who's more depending on the tourism as well. Okay, I'll keep on trotting a little bit because so we keep the timing. I'll leave this up to you.
Absolutely. So as I said, Shizuoka is about an hour outside of Tokyo. As you can see in the photos, it's very close to Mount Fuji. So it's one of the highlights or of the prefecture. Basically, anywhere you go, you'd have a beautiful backdrop of Mount Fuji in the background. So the location is really good. It's on the way to Kyoto as well, and that's one of the most traveled routes for first-time visitors. You start in Tokyo and then you head down to Kyoto. So this is a great stop in between. There's a lot of hiking either on or around Mount Fuji. Biking on the countryside. You see that in the photo as well. All the green tea farms, which is beautiful to see. And there's also a small peninsula called Izu Peninsula, which has beautiful coastlines, beautiful beaches as well for anyone who wants to see that, and a lot of onsen towns. So this is a place where a lot of people come to sort of relax. It's close enough for Tokyo that people who live in Tokyo that want to get out of the city, they all travel to this region for a weekend or a night's stay to relax and enjoy themselves.
Okay. So for what kind of excursions are you, if you're coming down, when we're coming down to Tokyo? I actually traveled that with the bullet train to Kyoto. That's why I saw, because I landed last time with the rugby. I was down, we landed in Kyoto and traveled all the way to Tokyo. Of course, seeing that, it's a beautiful, actually, a train ride, because there's a beautiful views and on the way there. But if you most probably go to Tokyo, and then they would maybe do like a weekend here, so that will be, you could do, what kind of excursions can you do, which you can arrange for people?
Well, as I said, a lot of it is in this area is focused on sort of outdoor activities, hiking or biking tours. There's visits to some of the smaller villages around the base of Mount Fuji as well. And in general, a stay at an onsen. This is a good stop. It's close to another famous area called Hakone, which is basically a great stop to be able to view or visit a Japanese ryokan, a Japanese style hotel.
Yeah. So accommodation you would recommend here, would that be a ryokan, or would it be a hotel, or would it be something else?
Both are available, but for anyone interested, the ryokans in some of the onsen towns, for example, are a fantastic place to experience that part of the Japanese culture.
Yeah, because I would say most people probably will like to experience that. Yeah.
Even if it's not for everyone to sleep on the floor and on mats, a night or two is still great to sort of check that off and have that experience.
Definitely. And then you had another area which was
called Shimane, and this is a little less accessible. It's more of a sort of an off the beaten path, at least for foreign tourists. Domestic tourism is definitely booming in this area, but it hasn't really sort of seen a spike in international tourism, and probably because it takes a little longer to get here, and you'd have to sort of really commit to visiting the area. But it definitely has a lot of things going for it. It's an area that's really great for local culture, local crafts, and arts in general.
How far is it from Tokyo?
It probably takes you around 4 hours to get here in total.
Okay, so with the bullet train and then change to another train or another private transport?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then what kind of excursions are you recommending, or what kind of accommodation is available on this area then?
Again, both hotels from various degrees, 3-4 star, and traditional Japanese accommodations as well. So you can choose whichever you want to.
Okay. Yeah. So you're looking at the 3 or 4 star hotels in this area, because it's more of a rural.
Yeah, as I said, there isn't enough sort of international tourism to attract a 5-star property to be built in this area. But that's also part of the charm of it as well. Exactly. You really get to sort of get closer to the local communities and the local people living here. Some of the Japanese style accommodations are really high quality.
Yeah. And then if you go into Oita, and I actually been down there as well, I think, because one of the rugby matches was played there.
Yeah, one of the rugby destinations. One of the reasons that they put them in the locations that they did was to try and highlight these areas that people generally don't go to.
Yeah, I think that was actually very good with the Rugby World Cup as well, because you actually got to see a lot of Japan because you traveled from place to place. We had 3 matches, so we were actually, the one in Tokyo was cancelled because of the hurricane or the storm. So, but we saw the other ones, and we were like down in Oita as well, yeah, which is a very nice area.
It's beautiful. That whole island is famous for its nature and onsen towns as well. But the region that we've decided to explore is a part of Oita that has traditional old pilgrimage routes. So over 100 kilometers of old pilgrimage routes that monks were walking more than 1,000 years ago, 1,300 years ago. So steeped in history, beautiful nature, and a lot of small but really beautiful temples that you get to see. And obviously, you're not going to walk the entire 100 kilometers, but we have different day tours that covers different sections of the trail, depending on if you're sort of a beginner or intermediate, or you want a more advanced style of hiking.
And just to because it's not maybe everybody who knows what an onsen town is. Can you just shortly explain what that is?
Absolutely. I'm sorry for not doing that right away, but basically, way back in town, Japanese people discovered these natural hot springs, water that was being heated by underground volcanic activities. And with that came an idea that these hot springs had healing properties. So people would venture to these areas to bathe in these hot springs, either because they wanted some of the health benefits or the perceived health benefits, or just to relax. And so small towns started springing up around these hot springs. And in Japanese, the hot spring is called onsen. Yeah. So now these small towns that have sprung up around these hot springs, they have either public bathhouses with onsens in them, or they have Japanese-style hotels, ryokans, that have their own private hot springs attached to the ryokan itself. Some of the more high-end ones will also have a private bath in your room as well.
Yeah, we stayed at one ryokan, and forget me, I can't remember, but there was more up in the mountains on the way down. So we stayed with a hot. They had a public one kind of thing where you could go in all, and they had a few of the rooms with private ones as well.
It's definitely a luxury, but if you're only spending 1 or 2 nights at a traditional ryokan, it's definitely, if you have the money to get a private hot spring bath, it's fantastic, because especially if you're traveling as a couple or a family, because normally the public ones are separated by gender. So the only way to really enjoy it together with your partner or family is to have a private one in your room. Or some of them have smaller hot springs that you can rent for an hour or 2.
Yeah, because in our ryokan there was one public kind of with separate, of course.
Yeah.
So it's and there was certain hours as well they put up on that as well, and but it's a nice like I said, Oita as well was a very nice area. We had a couple of days down in the area because we had to take the train to, of course, the stadium. And of course with the train, like you say, when people come down, when we open up, what you're saying is that of course Destination can arrange everything with the trains and the bullet train and the other trains and transport, and most of the transportation goes by train basically around.
Yeah, we have a pretty, or I would say a very good network of bullet trains that covers most areas of Japan. But once you venture away from that, you'd have to connect with either a local train or if you want a private vehicle. And obviously, we'll be more than happy to make those arrangements. And we always try to make sure that there's as few connections as possible, so you don't have to switch trains multiple times or things like that, and make sure that we minimize the amount of travel that you do, so that you have more time to enjoy Japan and sightsee.
Exactly. And I must say, because we used, of course, Destination Asia services when we were down for the rugby, and it's a very easy way of doing it. Because we use train, because we said we want to do train all the time, or most of the time. So we are on the bullet train, and the bullet train, which is really for those who hasn't been in Japan, I think, and you're coming the first timer. I was my first timer, and for having that system where you're queuing, there is a line, you have your number for your carriage and your train, so there's a very systemized way. So I think everyone can be able to find out where they're going, because since the bullet train is very, it's as a Scandinavian, we're amazed about that. It says, sorry, we got 2 minutes delay on the train, and we're going like, okay, that's nothing we make sorry for. They don't even make sorry for 20 minutes delay in Copenhagen. So it's an amazing system. It is.
It definitely is, and I would also venture to say that even if you travel on sort of the regular trains, it's fairly easy to get around, and everything is very organized. So even if you don't really speak Japanese, it's still easy enough to get around and figure out how things work and where you need to go. But obviously, for anyone who wants to, we'll be more than happy to send a guide or assistant with you. So, either way, we want to make sure that you feel safe.
I'm trying to see if Kevin is on there, and I'm trying to get him in on so he could come on. Kevin said, hang on a second.
I think he might be listening in on his phone while he's traveling, so I'm not sure if he's...
Is it? Okay, he was putting up a hand, and if he wanted to say something. So that's what I was wondering, if you want to do that. And I didn't get him. So Kevin, do you want to say something? Because your hand disappeared. And if not, put a hand again back. See if I can. Hang on a second. I'll see if I can do something there. Or if you can Kevin, if you can send us a message on the chat if you want to say something. But I think we're gonna. Of course we can't get away from talking about the Olympics and the Paralympics. And I'll sort out, if you talk around that one, I'll sort out Kevin here, if he can get in.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rumors going around the Olympics. And at the end of the day, what we have to rely on what the government says. And they were pretty quick to denounced the latest rumors that they were planning to cancel and say that there's no plan to cancel. And in general, they are doing a lot of work here in Tokyo to figure out systems to make it as safe as possible for anyone participating. They're testing out all these different methods of scanning people and keeping track of movements around inside the arenas, and testing out different ways of letting people enter and exit in a safe way. So a lot of these sort of tests to make sure that once the Olympics happens, they will be as prepared as possible. And in general, I would say, with the structure of everyday life here in Japan, and then adding that, there's a lot at stake for the Olympics. I do feel that, however it will be organized, it will be very well organized.
Yeah.
But the big question now is
If.
how rather than if.
Yeah. Okay.
How many
So
people?
you exactly. So you kind of feels in the, because since you are on place, we hear a lot of rumors and you read about it and everything. So you feel like the date is going to be there and they will be able to do this this summer in terms of the Olympics. And like you said, we got the vaccine. So if the teams needs to be vaccinated as well, you got. And we have seen, of course, here there has been sports events here where people, come in. They come in 2 weeks before, and have to be, in their bubble and isolated there, and and then before they can get in. Do you think that it's going to be possible to have spectators as well to the Olympics?
Very good question. I really hope so, and it seems like that's what they're trying to achieve, at least. Again, with the plans to sort of open up the borders slowly to make sure that they can handle the influx of people coming in for the Olympics. But at the end of the day, I mean, we all know that things change very quickly.
All the time. Yeah. Because the tickets were out on sale before the pandemic, or so those tickets have been refunded or rearranged, or
anyone who wanted to could move the tickets over to the new dates, same events, but for the new dates this year. And those who wanted a refund were offered the refund.
Okay. Cool. So that's working. So when we getting the dates and when we hear about if there is any ticket left in terms of that, of course, in some events, of course, we can do an update when we get more information, and we can talk again actually on Pure Olympics when we know there is more dates or even tickets or whatever, measurements in place and all that. I think we managed to cover quite a lot. Is there anything else, Andrea, we need to cover at this stage? Are you taking any bookings at the moment? Are you feeling, is there coming any bookings at all from around the world, basically, or international bookings?
Every day and every week, there's a slow but steady trickle of new requests and new bookings coming in. Anything that we see in terms of questionnaires and where people want to go and top destinations, Japan is always somewhere in the top 10 or top 5. And talking to some of our partners in different markets, we're expecting a huge boom as soon as Japan opens its borders. It feels like a lot of people think that Japan is a safe place to visit in general, and I guess with the Olympics as well, it's sort of top of people's mind. And we've seen in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years even that Japan, the increase in interest for Japan has sort of just been on a steady ascent. So we see a continued interest in Japan, and we do expect it to take off as soon as the borders open. We have people sort of knocking on the door, and in general, I think the last sentiment I want to share is that we're ready and we're waiting as well. We've made sure that we've looked at our products and the way we operate and say, okay, how does that need to change? What do we need to do to make sure that people can travel safely here in Japan once things open up again, and not just sort of safely in terms of the virus, but also safe in a sense that people can relax and enjoy, and they don't worry about it, when traveling. There's a mental aspect to that as well, and
it is.
We've done that job, and I think we've talked to all of our suppliers to make sure that everyone's on the same page as well, and yeah, we're waiting and we're ready to go as soon as things kick off again.
And I think also for the travel agents who's out there listening to it, or we listen to it afterwards as well, on the replay we're sending out tomorrow, it's automatically sent out to everybody who's signed up. And I think also bearing in mind that, of course, with Destination Asia, when you do bookings with there is, of course, possibilities for canceling. You're kind of safe in terms of it's a big company with a good financial background. So it also goes in terms, of course, people are thinking, cancellation, refunds and everything. So and that has been taken care of the first time around, and also, will be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always want to make sure that our partners and their clients all feel safe booking with us, and especially in a time like this, we understand that we need to be as flexible as possible with with our terms and conditions as well. And we make sure that none of our partners get stuck with unwanted costs in situations like this. So
excellent. I think we managed almost. We kind of on to like 10 minutes over, but we find it better than most of the other times. But it was a pleasure talking to you, Andre, and I think that it's definitely a situation where we need to do an update when we see closer to, maybe, like we said, the tickets get released again, or they have more information on the Olympics, and how people actually can get in touch with you for booking these or looking for, package around the Olympics.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to come back at any time.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you everybody who was joining as well. And the replay will be sent to you even tomorrow, and you can share it with your colleagues as well then tomorrow when you have it. And thank you, Andre, and enjoy the evening almost, isn't it, in Japan? You are, what time is it your time?
Yeah, closing in on 7 p.m. over here. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. Okay, have a good evening, I would say to you.
Thank you, and thank you all for listening. Have a good day.
Everybody, thank you.